Okay. Hello, everyone. So, welcome to our next episode of Colloquium in the IPN Colloquium series. Today, we have with us Gaya Hadiya. Gaya is a research scholar at IIT Dharwad. Her work is focusing on, as the title indicates, ethics of AI, and she will be discussing us meta-ethics of AI agency. So, I'm not taking much time. So Gaya will speak to us for roughly 45 minutes. Then we will have a discussion. So, Gaya, over to you.
Hi. Everybody can hear me, right? Like the screen I am audible and the things are visible, I hope. Yes. So this whole my PhD research, as Srinath said, is largely on metaethics of AI. I'm focusing on AI agency. So I was particularly looking at this relationship between AI agency and moral agency of artificial entities and moral responsibility. And this was actually this whole tangent is very new in my research, and it was actually suggested by one of my external members. Don suggested me that you look at this internalist externalist debate. You try to understand this particular problem that I was looking at in that context, and so for me it was internalist externalist debate was mostly something that I was familiar with, the debate in philosophy of mind, or it was a discussion or a disagreement or like a basically a problem that is to do with epistemology for me. So, but in ethics, there are epistemic aspects of this debate, but we'll be largely understanding, at least for this paper, this discussion, we'll be understanding this internalist externalist debate as something more to do with the source of the moral action or to do with moral motivation. The question is like, where do we what motivates, or like what is the source of moral action, is the question. And an internalist would say the moral action is internal to the moral agent. That is something along the lines like what um, Thomas Nagel would say, that the moral judgment, the moral action, is the moral judgment is a source of moral action. That would be, if if I have reason to believe that X morally right thing, and then I also have a reason to do X. That is like the moral judgment comes with a motivation to act, a reason to act. Unlike he says, unlike other judgments like mathematical judgment or um, other empirical judgments, he says like moral judgment is of that nature that there is like it's more a motivation, a reason to act, sort of comes with that. It's a part of it. So, and externalists would say no. It is probably like, the social, other external factors like, how like certain social rules or like certain mandates, things like that, or just external factors that, sort of forces you to act certain way or like give you reason to act that way. So the epistemic side of it, as I understand, is like, and if you try to explain a moral action, internalist would explain it with a reason explanation, in the sense, explaining an action would be to explain or to give the reason of the moral agent, like the giving the motivation or intention or like the desired belief, where like you'll be explaining the action. A comprehend a correct explanation of the action would have the internal mental state or the intentionality of the agent. Rather, like the externalist account would probably explain it in terms of what uh, uh, let's like not in the strict sense of the causal explanation, but like it'll rather have like a explaining a causal chain, like what these are the factors that led or like that forced or like that motivated the action. So we'll also, if there is any doubt in between that's not clear, please stop me and ask me like if something is not clear or I am missing something. Okay, so that's we'll understand the externalist internalist debate like that for this paper, and now we'll be looking at okay, so this whole problem of uh, okay, so if I had the earlier title, it would have been easier to explain here. But I'll basically be looking at the standardist functionalist debate. There is a standardist functionalist debate that is in ethics. So my research is situated at a juncture where in metaethics there is an ongoing research that can existing ethics, that is the anthropocentric traditional ethics, accommodate and explain this new entity and the interactions or actions caused by or like involved in with this new entity that is like a new kind of a decision maker, that is this AI agent, an AI what do you call that? Um, an AI decision maker, basically. So, can we accommodate this new kind of a entity that seems to have some kind of agencies? It seems to have freer than it is a tool, but still it is not just a tool. It is more nuanced. It seems to have some. To what some extent there is a decision making capacity. To some extent there is a freedom to choose, like for this new agent or new actor. So I'll be using AI actor to indicate this entity. So can we accommodate this entity within the existing frameworks of traditional ethics, which is very anthropocentric, the concepts that we have there and the relations that we have made between the concepts and the framework that we have developed to understand the interaction are very anthropocentric. It is to understand the interaction between human beings and human beings. So within that ethics, can we accommodate this new entity is the question. And a group of people would say yes, or we should be able to. So that is the view that I am. That would be the standardist view, and the functionalist view would say no. This is we have to understand this new entity in its own context. So the human AI interaction cannot be explained or like looked into using the concepts or the framework that we have developed to understand human interaction, like the human to human interaction. We'll have to come up with new frameworks or concepts to accommodate that discussion. So that would be the functionalist view. So I'll be looking at a debate or disagreement, especially between Deborah G. Johnson and Luciano Floridi. Floridi is the functionalist guy here, and Johnson, she is the standardist part. So we'll particularly be looking at the agreement in attributing agency. So Deborah Johnson says like AI entities cannot be AI moral agents, while Lucy argues for something like he calls it the artificial moral agency. So Deborah Johnson says there cannot be something like artificial moral agency, and the functionalist view says like okay, there is. They argue for the artificial moral agency. So now, why are we focusing on agency? Uh, Agency is an important aspect, a significant concept to get some clarity on, because when we say that, at the moment we identify an agent, we are identifying an action, we are identifying a purposeful, something that is done with intention, that is something done with, it is legitimizing a source of action, also legitimizing a responsible party, right? So the moment there is an agent, it's not an event anymore. It's like this becomes an action. And also, a moral agent is also a legal entity, not just a moral entity. So by legitimizing entity that is non-human entity as a source of action, as a moral agent, probably we are creating a loophole, a moral loophole where, some people can sort of get away with certain actions by saying like, okay, the source of action is this AI entity, but can we really be send the AI entity to jail, or like doesn't make to punish the entity, right? But the question is that somebody has to be punished. Should somebody be punished? Should somebody actually be go to jail if there is a moral violation that, you know, that is mechanically caused by, like, let's say a self-driving car, or AI that performs a surgery, something like that. So this is majorly my concern. At least for me to pick this up, the concern was like this idea of like a legal loophole that is created by legitimizing an entity that is the source of action, that is the agent, but devoid of responsibility. So that's my reason why I, started focusing on this agency debate. Now, what do these people say about moral agency? Just roughly, like a simple definition of so Floridi. So when I say Floridi, I'm talking about the functionalist and Deborah Johnson, the standardist. So I'll most probably not be using functionalist as standardist, mostly be focusing on Floridi and Deborah. So Floridi says like these agents, they lack intentionality, so he calls them mindless agents. So they cannot be accommodated. These mindless agents cannot be accommodated in the traditional discussions of AI. So we are reworking the framework, or if not coming up with a whole new ethics, there has to be like very serious, very large amendments that has to be made in order for us to accommodate these more mindless agents in the discussion. So for him, the benchmark is not human agency. He's not comparing or establishing agency for these for these machines uh, by constantly comparing it to the human agency that we are used to. Rather, he is establishing agency for these mindless agents by looking at their interaction in their context. He calls it the level of abstraction. So Floridi says in a given level of abstraction, in certain levels of abstraction, you can claim that, or you can proves that they have limited in these limited level of abstraction, they have autonomy, interactability, adaptability, and autonomy. Hence, he says they are agents, but mindless agents. So responsibility cannot be attributed, but can still be qualified or understood as identified as moral agents. Deborah Johnson says no. She is coming from a place of like constantly comparing it to the human agency, or like our understandings of traditional anthropocentric ethics, that she says no. If we understand agency as what we have understood so far, these entities are not moral agents. We can't really qualify them as moral agents. She says like they are moral entities. They are agents. They have some kind of agency because they seem to be building, like working in their own rules. They are able to sort of alter the rules under which they are functioning, and to to somewhat, to a limited extent, they are even able to alter their objective, or drive, like decide the end. So hence there is some kind of agency there, and there are also some kind of moral entities, because they are a significant, they can be like a significant aspect of a moral action. So a moral action, but they are just being a part of this moral action. She's like, she does not agree that you can really give them the moral agency. She goes to the extreme of saying, like, of saying, uh, if this entity seem to be representing moral agency, that also is not enough to say that they are actually moral agents. She says, she would say something, she would rather go for like something like a compound agency, where there is a human counterpart and then there is a machine counterpart. And then she says the responsibility falls on the human agent only, and hence, since you cannot really give the responsibility to the machines, and for her, like the whole idea of the whole reason why one should be thinking about agency, or sort of uh, uh, worrying about who the agent is, solely one of the major reasons, or like the key reason, is that so that you'll know where to who is responsible, what is responsible for this action. So if you cannot really hold this machine responsible for an action, or the responsibility, if it does not fall on the machine, then it is not an agent, it is just a moral entity. Also some kind of an agency is there, but it's not moral agency, is what she says. So now, one of the places where we can understand this the standardist functionalist difference, is how they define autonomy or freedom. So Deborah Johnson says, and it's there, we can see that, mostly everyone across, consequentialist, non-consequentialist, all kinds of utilitarian, everybody agrees that, the agent has to be free. There has to be autonomy. The agent has to be autonomous in some sense. So that autonomy, she says, for her, it is a freedom to choose your action. And by freedom to choose, she means that, capability to reason your action, to have a rational, sound argument built to justify, okay, this is my action. So that capacity is what she calls freedom here. So it is a very human, very anthropocentric understanding of freedom also there. To the capacity to justify their choice, and by justifying their choice, they are choosing. So that is the action, the act, the very act of choice that they are making is basically justifying or reasoning out a choice. That is what she called freedom. For Floridi, on the other hand, freedom is, like I mentioned above, he talks about, he says, like, okay, let's see what should an agent have in order to be called an agent. So he says there are three major factors that are like, adaptability, interactability, and autonomy. Um, so it's like Floridi argues this against, along this lines, like, a stone that is kept on the table is interacting with the air, the environment, but not really adapting to the environment. Now here, like, you have to see what happens to the stone, different from if the stone is doing something. So once we make that differentiation, it's not really adapting to the environment. It is but interacting with the environment. So for the stone, it's not an agent because it lacks adaptability and autonomy. So, and then he says like a air conditioner or a thermostat. He talks about a thermostat. So thermostat is actually interacting with the environment and adapting with the environment also. So it's adapting with the changes that is happening in the environment, and it's changing the temperature. It is like, there are actions initiated by this thermostat with the changes to adapt to the change in the environment. And then he talks about the possibility of an AI thermostat. Now, sorry. Now this thermostat would be, let's imagine this is connected to like, this is in a hospital room, and this is a AI-enabled thermostat that is connected to the machines that is reading the vitals of the patient. And then, so the thermostat can actually decide. In the earlier case, the thermostat will be given, this is the ideal temperature. You make sure that the room's temperature stays here. So the temperature in the room, if changes, the thermostat, sort of adapts and, adjusts the temperature according to the already given rule. It is change, the end, it's a very precise end that is given to the machine, right? So now an AI thermostat already says, like, this will be capable of deciding the end for itself. Like, it can decide what is the ideal temperature for this patient, since while as the condition of the patient changes, the thermostat can decide, or like, build rule for itself. So this capacity to build for itself to act on is what Floridi calls autonomy. So now, Florida's autonomy or freedom is the freedom to build its own categories and build its own or set rules for itself, is what Florida understands as freedom and or autonomy. And for Deborah Johnson, it is a capacity to build a rational justification and argument to choose one rather than the other. So here itself, this is one of the places where, the standardist functionalist difference is very obvious. Johnson's definition is very anthropocentric, and it is constantly going back to our understanding of freedom, free will, the understanding of human being, and then the free will of the human being, and how we understand freedom, to freedom of choice in a person, in human beings. And but for Floridi, he has understood the whole concept of autonomy from within um, the context of a machine, without, like, constantly comparing the idea of the concept of freedom in human beings. It's this idea of freedom is he's understanding freedom within the context of the machine. He calls it level of abstraction, actually. Yeah. So, and then now, so now we have two functionalist and standardist view. So now, functionalists, how do the functionalists define agency? So Floridi's deal is this. He's like, okay, so now there is like a, if there is a moral patient, by moral patient, I mean somebody who was harmed or helped by action, morally harmed or helped by an action. If there is a moral patient present, then then it's only commonsensical to, assume that there is a moral action and there is a moral agent hence. So then if there is a source of that action, you identify that as a moral agent, uh, as long as that source, sort of satisfy the conditions that we discussed above, I mean, before, the adaptability, interactability, and autonomy. So it's very simple for him. So it's like, if it looks like it has agency, might as well treat it like an agent. Now, the standardist conditions for agency, we're looking at particularly the one Deborah Johnson presence. So she is talking about, she's giving actually 5 conditions for anything, to an entity to be qualified. That is, she says that she agrees with the action theory, the contemporary action theory, by which as I have understood it, she's like going with the action theory of Davidson. So, Davidson's action theory, what does it say? It simply says, like, if there are like n number of descriptions for an event, and in, let's say, in one of those description, if you describe it using intentionality, then you can say under that description it's an action. So their intentionality seemed to be a defining key factor of an action or an agent. So she is arguing, she's accepting this as a basic uh, you know, uh, fact, and she's building her argument on this. So now she says, first thing that has to be there in order for something to be, qualify as an agent is the internal mental state. By this internal mental state, she means like the desire, belief, or other internal states. Also intentional. These internal mental states will come to it. So there has to be, the agent needs to have an internal mental state. And now there has to be an embodied event. Uh, an embodied event is what we identify or observe as the action. Um, and then this out then this she established she claims the relationship between this internal mental state and this outward action has to is to it should be causal. The internal mental state has to be the cause of this action, that outward action that you can observe, and then this outward action needs to have an outward effect. And now the fifth point is that this outward effect of this outward action is the moral patient. So simply said, I have, if I am thinking of, you know, helping someone, so I need to first have the internal mental state or the motivation or the intentionality to help somebody. And then let's say I am opening a door for somebody. And now my internal mental state that I should help or I should open the door is causing my action going and opening the door. And now this action, this outward action, also, that outward action is, causing a moral patient. So here, like, it's a moral help. Or let's say I am lying. I am lying to this person. Then, like, there is somebody as a result of my outward action that again causes. So she's basically establishing a causal chain between a mental state, an outward action, and moral patiency. So, and then she goes on to explain this in terms of a syllogism. That is just, I mentioned it to say that, for to act intentionally for her is to act for a reason. Um, so that rational part, that justifying capacity is very important for her. That's what makes an agent an intentional agent. an agent, a moral agent for her. So yeah, so what she basically establishes here is like the capacity to exercise agency comes only with internal mental state, that is intentional mental states. Now she says she obviously refutes Floridi's argument that because this entity qualifies, has these satisfied this condition of the three conditions: adaptability, interactability, and autonomy, and there is a moral patient. Is that enough to say? Is it enough to attribute moral agency to this entity? It's the question. She says no. That's not really enough to say that either you have to disprove this entire this is like the this conditions, you have to prove this method, this framework wrong, or you have to say that this particular entity, AI entity, I'm using the term AI actor. Deborah Johnson uses the term computer, artifact, and technology. She says like an artifact is the concrete, that material, that object. And then that artifact has its meaning only when it's like, placed within the social context and knowledge of human being, uh, along with human behavior. Only that artifact makes sense, and the artifact, and then you call it technology. That's how she sort of uses the terms. And Floridi says moral agent. Floridi says, uses the term artificial moral agent. So I'm using the term AI to sort of indicate what we imagine that both of them, if at all both of them are talking about us, one entity, one common entity, that I'm using the term AI actor to indicate that. So now in this five, so now we are seeing the Deborah Johnson is saying like, or we're seeing, would a AI actor satisfy all these five conditions? So she says the two and five, the two, an outward embodied event has to be there, and the outward effect needs to have a outward. I mean, this outward event needs to have an outward effect. That is the moral patient. So two and five are very easily it can be established. And Floridi actually places his entire argument based on these two things. There is an action that you can observe, and this seems to be mechanically at least causing this patient. So that causal chain mein, that part is satisfied by this AI entity. So you can, so that, yes, she says, okay, that can be established. Now, what about 1, 3, and 4? So she says you cannot really so what Johnson does is like she's identifying two parts, and if two actions, if I may, like an internal action and an external action, which are causally related. So for the AI actor, we can only establish the external action part of it. The internal action is completely missing. So she's seeing, so now we can, let's identify this internal action as intentionality, or because it's like, the what, by internal mental state with a very definite direction, we can understand it as intentionality here. So now she's looking at this like, can we say, is there any intentionality involved at all in this external action that seems to be that is performed by this AI? If there is an intentionality that is internal to this AI actor, then we can qualify this as an agent, no problem. But she's saying there is an intentionality involved, but it is not of the machine. It is not of this technology. It is not of this AI actor. It is either of the one who designed it, the maker of it, or the user of it. So if I am using a machine, if I am the user of the machine, if I am user of the car, like let's say a self-driving car, and then I have, sort of set, there was this whole thing, right? Like in between, I think Tesla only. Most of these things are done by Tesla. So he comes up with this option that they gave this people who are buying the car can decide, like, if in case of an emergency situation, who should the car be prioritizing? Should it be the one who's inside the car, or should it be the one? It's a classic trolley problem, basically. So should it be the one outside the car? So now once the buyer, when this buyer is choosing that, okay, I will buy the car with this um, setup, or like with this, what do you call that? The car who does this basically, who prioritizes the person who's sitting inside. Now the user has basically decided, sort of predetermined or pre-decided in such a situation, what would the car do? So in that case, the intentionality is of the user. If the car goes and hit a person, a pedestrian, and now that intentionality is actually coming from the user, or let's say the machine is, there is no choice given to the user. It's mostly the machine is designed in such a way that it will inevitably go and do this. So then that intentionality is coming from the maker, the designer, or there are actually makers involved. There is like a one who is like writing the algorithm, then there is a one who is like training, there is somebody who's providing the training data, the data scientists. So all these we can call them all as like makers or designers. So intentionality of this machine, there is an intentionality involved in this action, but that is actually for the machine, it's a derived intentionality. It is not intentionality of the machine, but it is an intentionality that is coming external, that is external to this machine. That is a factor that is not internal to this machine. That is an external factor that is sort of causing this outward action of the machine, which then causes this moral patient. So yeah, now yeah, intentionality in case of 1 minute. Yeah, it's a derivative one, and it's of the creator or designer. So now that we can basically conclude that here the key aspect of function. Uh, and another interesting thing is like the Deborah Johnson and Floridi agrees on most of these conditions that has to be satisfied by an entity to call it an actor. There has to be certain level of autonomy. There has to be intentionality to hold a machine responsible. They agree on most of these things. But what Floridi, the key difference is that Floridi says you can just go ahead and qualify this entity as a moral agent devoid of responsibility. Johnson says like, no, if there is no responsibility, there is no point of calling anything an agent. So that seems to be pointless, and no. And now Florida is like, okay, there is a moral patient. Let's look at this. Clearly there is a moral patient. And that moral patient is at least fully mechanically caused by this machine. So we can say that this machine is acting morally. It has a moral implication. So Florida is like, and then Deborah would say, no, there has to be the intentionality, that like the action to claim that the moral action has to be caused because this is there has to be an intentionality, an intentional mental state that is causing the action. Hence that is absent the intentionality, if at all something that we can imagine. It's also a derivative intentionality that is not really original or internal to this machine. So hence no. So the only difference between Deborah Johnson, or like the only difference that you can spot, the only disagreement, not difference, the disagreement is that the machine seems to be lacking in functionalist account. The AI actor seems to be lacking intentionality that is original. So now, so yeah, this actually it's Shinot who pointed out this difference. We were just really, you know, sort of struggling with this, how to convey this, like how do we put it forth. So Shinot is the one actually pointed out that it's the difference between intentionality and intention. So the machine, we can say, and Deborah Johnson also agrees, has intentionality, though it's a derivative one. What it lacks is a mind that is capable of having the intentionality, that is an intention. So the disagreement is on that point, that cannot be a moral agent because it lacks intention or a mind that is capable of having that intention, having that original moral judgment coming is what this machine lacks. So this is clearly a difference. This is an internalist externalist difference here. So that's what I'm trying to say. That the standardist functionalist disagreement regarding moral agency, attributing moral agency, is actually a matter of internalist externalist difference. So it is also hence probably very like irreconcilable, because they are both holding on to two kinds of, like, again, like Shinod would say, the commitments here are very different. So yeah, that's that's my argument. That's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Gaya. That was a smooth sail. So we have a good amount of time for a discussion. So now I would invite the listeners, if you have any question, comments, please use the raise hand option so then you can follow a protocol. Yeah, why don't please go ahead.
Hi, Gaya. Nice to meet you and good to hear your talk as well. I just have a first clarificatory question. I will ask other set of questions later, but I thought it's important to just clarify this to begin with so that rest of the discussions are also clear with that. So you have presented the standardist and the functionalist debate. So what is your stance here? I mean, are you supporting Deborah? You're supporting Floridi? So that
So
let's have that stakes clear
yeah.
so that we know what are we at.
Uh, uh, So initially, I was very impressed by Floridi's arguments, actually, because I was particularly looking at if we can have some kind of a test to prove that, I was particularly looking at self-driving cars, and, like, to see if a car is moral or immoral. And this framework seemed very impressive and seemed like, practically useful. But then I came across this interesting fact that Florida is actually chairing a lot of you know committees by a lot of these corporates, Ford and like Tesla, and also there seems to be like a very clear capitalist agenda to create a moral entity that can be qualified as a moral agent, like almost like creating a very smooth legal loophole for some people to get away with the responsibility. So that's when I started paying more attention to Borodinson. I'm not fully convinced. I don't know. There are again, this is a very, I am in my initial stage. It's just I just finished with my first year of my PhD. So it's very initial stage. And like, I seem to be, leaning towards Deborah's arguments here, because I have not been able to come up with a reason why one should be thinking about agency if you can't really talk about responsibility along with it. So I think not fully convinced, but like I'm leaning towards Deborah Johnson's arguments here.
Yeah, good. Thanks. I'll come back with my questions later. Shushruth has, yeah.
Yeah, Shushrut.
Yeah, hi. Nice to see you, Gaya, after
Yeah.
all these years. Yeah, so since I work in meta ethics, I'm slightly familiar with the internalism externalism debate, and I was slightly confused what kind of internalism externalism you're talking about. For example, is it judgment internalism? Is it motivation internalism? I don't think there is one internalism externalism in meta ethics, so I was not sure what you are referring to.
Yeah. So initially, I also it was like I was thoroughly confused how to understand, make sense of this internalism, externalism debate in ethics. So initially, I was to go with this whole idea of, like, where does the morality come from? Where does the moral value come from? Is it something that comes from, like, something along the lines of consequentialist, and the other, like, does it come from the internal mental state of a moral agent or not? And late, do we understand, like, the morality of an action looking at the intentionality or mental state of the agent or the consequence? And then later it sort of, now I have moved away from there, more of a like, this is regarding motivation. At least in this paper, the internalism externalism that I am referring to is about regarding the moral motivation. So what is the source of moral motivation? Like I mentioned in the beginning, like, so is it the motivation of the action, is it internal or external? That's the idea of internalist externalist debate that I am referring to here.
Then I'm not sure whether it will give you what you want, because you can be a motivational externalist even with respect to normal agents, right? I mean, human beings also. So it's not that everybody, when they talk about human beings, they'll only talk about motivational internalism. And the whole idea then would be, so the way I understand it, motivational internalism would basically say that whenever you make a judgment, motivation is part of the package deal. That's how Smith understands
Right.
it. That's how most meta-ethicists understand it. Whereas externalism would say that no, a judgment needs the support of a desire. And unless there is a desire accompanying a judgment, it wouldn't really give you motivation. So that is where Brink and a lot of other externalists would come in. So I was not sure how this is exactly translating to the AI agents and human agents. Because if you say that there is some other supporting mechanism, that when, I don't know, first of all, you'll have to say whether AI agents are actually making a judgment or not.
Hello. Something happened to my laptop. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hello? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sorry. So
I'm
I
really
don't
sorry
know
about
where
that.
I got cut short. I mean, where you lost me.
Yeah, so you're telling me like how the desire part has like the
Yeah, so
telling.
yeah, I see other hands raised, so I'll try to keep it short, and we can come back if you want more clarifications. So my whole idea was this motivational internalism, and the way it exists in metaethics, it's not so easy to translate it into a direct AI versus human agents, which I thought crudely was what you were trying to do, because there's plenty that could be said to say that even if AI agents, actors make judgments, then motivation is sort of part of the package, and they can take actions. They don't need anything external to it. So within a human agents itself, this internalism, externalism is at an impasse where we don't know how to actually resolve this. So I was not sure whether it can give you any kind of clear distinction between the structuralist and the functionalist, or between Floridi and Deborah's points of view.
So let me just this one thing. So if let's say the morality of the action.
Sorry, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, if the morality of the action, if that is decided by,
I mean, internalism, externalism has got nothing to do with that morality of the action. So, for example, think of somebody like Moore, right? So Moore was an intentionist. So Moore would say that you don't look at the consequences, the rightness or the wrongness comes within it. So that it's not very easy to separate those on the lines of internalism, externalism. I think that unless you make it more specific, that differentiation is not going to give you anything at all. So you could be a deontologist and not be an motivational internalist. You could be a consequentialist and you could be a motivational internalist. So I think it can crisscross. So perhaps a little more, I mean, I understand you're just beginning, but perhaps a little more clarity of what is internalism, externalism might be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll stop here and then we can come back. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Swami?
Yes, hi. Hi, sorry. I mean, actually, my question was kind of preempted by Fulford, but I will anyway maybe make a suggestion. So, I mean, the dichotomy between internalism and externalism that you were talking about, and internalism, you were talking, if I remember correctly, in terms of reasons, I mean, that you use to motivate your actions and so on and so forth. I mean, you may want to look at Jonathan Dancy, who thinks of reasons as being externalists, as being states of matter, or states of affairs. So yeah, just maybe he's written a lot on reasons as not being internalist. Yeah. Jonathan Dancy. Yeah, that's yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Jyoti.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Gaya. First of all, I want to thank you for this talk because I have also just finished first year of my PhD and I work in similar area. So this talk was very interesting for me, and I think we should definitely connect post the talk.
Yeah.
Just certain things that I want to point out. So first thing that when you spoke about AI agency and moral agency, I felt somewhere that moral responsibility, legal responsibility. I think both of them were conflated. So, and there are philosophers working in this area. Specifically, I'm talking about Walter Sinnott Armstrong. Like recently, they have come up with this new book. It was published this year. So in this book, actually, I would also want to recommend this book to you if you want to read it. So they talk about like how ethically we can approach AI. So they kind of make a differentiation between moral sanction and legal sanction. And they give a very nice example. So I think somewhere that distinction should come out because these two things cannot be conflated. Apart from that, I also wanted to talk like, can you go back to your conclusion one? Because talking about position, I think that was not very clear to me. Talking about position, if
1 minute, let me just.
sure.
Recording in progress.
That is one.
So I think somewhere I got confused here actually, and I was just so I'll tell you what I've understood, and maybe you can help me understand this better because I obviously wanted to understand that what standardist view entails and what a functionalist view entail. So so let me tell you like my position, and you can let me know like how do you categorize it. So, first thing, is there any like debate or is there any problem between like I do know that Floridi thinks like any AI tool or AI decision making anything any AI system, he classifies it as an agent and does not attribute intelligence to it. He has made that distinction in one of his other book, The Ethics of AI. So
What
he
kind of intelligence are we talking about here? When you say it does not attribute to intelligence?
Yeah, when we say artificial intelligence, he does not want to attribute intelligence to AI systems. And I think intelligence he has the kind of intelligence we attribute to humans.
Moral intelligence? Are we?
He actually wants to, he does not specifically say it's moral intelligence. Even in the book, when he talks about agency, he just assigns agency to it and not moral agency. So I'm pretty sure that you're referring to obviously some of his work where you assign moral agency to AI systems.
So he says, are you talking about, he says like they are mindless agents. He is sort of saying like, you cannot like really, he is not comparing this intelligence of machine with human intelligence like a standardist view would do, right? So he is saying like these agents are these AI systems are agents and they're in, I don't know like in what sense, at least I've not really fully probably paid attention to this, not assigning intelligence to the machines. But I think I've come across this point, like he's like they are like mindless agents because they lack intentionality. They lack original intentionality is the reason why he says like they are mindless, in the sense they do not have a mind that feel or, you know, intent. So is that what you were referring to?
Actually, what exactly I'm referring to, I'll tell you. So in this book, I'll probably after the call offline, I can tell you the page number and all. So sorry, it's
Jyoti,
blurred. Yeah.
can I just quickly add?
Sure.
What actually he is trying to point out there is to both Jyoti and Gaya. Actually, he is referring to the intelligence as used by the Dartmouth research proposal, where the computer scientists are saying, and this is to just quote him because I was also reading it some time back, is to say that for the present purpose of the artificial intelligence problem is taken to be that of making a machine that behaves in ways that would be called intelligent if a human were so be behaving. In that sense, whatever you call as an intelligent action, looking for a particular person outside, if that is action is being done by a machine, now that is called as intelligence. So they're not doing any philosophy of mind or any of those things. So he's using that definition used by the engineers who proposed AI in the first place. And he's saying intelligence is just this, whether it is acting as if it has intelligence. That's it. Not whether it has intention and all of those things. So I'm sure Jyoti was trying to put it in various other ways like this.
Yeah, so basically what he does, as Varun rightly pointed out, so he kind of differentiates, like he removes away intelligence from AI systems. Like he does not want to attribute intelligence to it, but what he wants to attribute is agency. So so that's what I wanted to just like ask you, like for my own reference as well, is that if you could let me know about some citation or work where he has kind of seen AI systems not just as agency, because he definitely looks at AI systems as agency, but as a moral agent, like you know, not simply as agency, because he definitely looks them as an agency, and he states his points, his reason why he sees AI systems as an agent. But his paper or his work, where he has attributed, like he has called AI systems as a moral agent.
Yeah,
so
there
that
is this
was
paper, I
another
forgot
point.
the name of the paper. It's like Floridi written with Sanders, J.W. Sanders. I can share those papers like after the talk, like I'll mail it to you. I can.
Sure, I'll write to you,
Okay.
and definitely we can take this further because it will help me in my work as well. So that was one thing. Another thing that you can help me understand, because this is something I really don't know. What do they mean by moral patient? And then we can come back to this conclusion one again. That would be my last.
Moral patient is it's just an entity at whom this moral action is directed at. Like it's like if I'm lying to you, you are the moral patient. If you are morally somebody that is morally helped or harmed.
Or
at the receiving end of a moral action. That's all.
Which could be in AI systems, most probably be users.
AI users, or like, not really users also. It can be like, if see this, the thing with self-driving cars is they're constantly collecting data, right? The only way in which they can function is like by collecting data, like from the surroundings. So somebody who is a bypasser, probably his privacy is violated. That person could be like a moral patient. So it need not be always user, but could be user, or could be somebody who's completely unrelated, who's unaware of the existence of this machine, also could be a moral patient. That depends on like.
All right. This is clear. Now, just one last thing, and then I'll stop. Which is that, see, if so, I'm going to tell you my position, and then you can help me know under which category you would categorize that: standardist view or functionalist view. So, if I'm of the opinion that I believe that the motivation or intentionality that is derived by AI systems is actually derived from the design points that is encoded by AI contributors or AI designers. Then how do you categorize me? Because is it closer to what Floridi?
I'm sorry, can you? I'm really sorry. Can you
Sure.
explain? Huh?
So if I am of the opinion that the decisions or the intentionality of AI systems is actually encoded by AI contributors, the AI designers, in terms of probably design points in the
And that is
algorithm.
what
For instance, I'll give you also an example. Like suppose like if there is an AI system that is used in medical diagnosis. Are you there?
Yes, yes, yes. I
So
can hear you.
if there is an AI system that is used in medical diagnosis, that kind of diagnosis where somebody has a breast cancer, or like suppose somebody has a breast cancer, and they design the false positive and false negative of that kind, the decision that AI system outputs. So at what threshold AI system should say it's false positive, like the breast cancer is there or not. So these kind of outputs that is given by AI systems, these are actually done by the AI actors, which are basically software engineers, you could say. So these are design decisions, key design decisions. So if I say that, and these can have moral implication. If some disease is present, like a breast cancer, if it goes undetected, like it gets false positive. So in these kind of, because in these kind of, it is a key design decision, because we would want to have more of false positive than false negative in these kind of cases, because it's a kind of a deadly disease, you could say.
So the moral responsibility. Yeah.
No,
So
not
the
moral responsibility. I would want to say that, so this comes under the intentional. If this is how I describe the intentionality, like the intention that is driven by AI system is from the design, the way it is designed, then this falls under a standardist view or the functionalist view.
So that's what the functionalist view that I was discussing here of Floridi's. He denies any kind of intentionality for the machine at all. He's saying there is no intentionality. There is but Deborah Johnson, on the other hand, says there is an intentionality. It is a derived intentionality. Like you said, the intentionality of the maker is sort of translate or transferred to the machine. So that would be like a standardist argument to say that there is intentionality, but not of the machine, but of the makers of the machine. She says maker or user of the machine.
I get it. I mean, so what you would say that there is no intentionality at all. But Deborah would say that there is intentionality, and it is driven from the makers or the one who actually does that key designing of the algorithm and all. Actually, I'll have more, but I'll catch up with you probably offline, and I think that would be better.
That would be
So
actually
thank you
great.
so
I
much.
really
Yeah.
Only
Thank you,
come
Jyoti.
back. Okay, Suti,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jyoti.
you're still there. Gaya, probably you can stop sharing the screen.
Okay.
Shruti, are you still there?
She's there. She muted.
Yes,
She said she'll get back to me.
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, more than any question, I just thought I could just add certain things to whatever you're trying to do. So, as a philosopher and who would like to think about ethics, I would suggest that this becomes very, probably for me at least, whatever as just putting it in standardist view, functionalist view. What I would suggest is you can add your own arguments for both standardist and functionalist things and then apply it to, what's happening. Because I feel that the problem is when you say that AI has to be an agent morally responsible for something, saying that it's not really an agent seems obvious, right? Like, because of course it's not like human still and that and this. But what I want to say is probably if we think about free will for human and how free will is really part of human nature. I mean, is there free will or not free will? Directly connects with whether AI is also morally responsible for something or not. Because AI has a creator who has done something. And then if human being as, like if you say that, no, there is no free will for human being, things are like the choices are already given to you. Like there are 10 choices in front of you, but those 10 choices are not decided by me, right? When you talk about free will in a larger sense, the thing is there are 10 choices in front of me. I can choose one, but then those 10 choices are only those 10 which is not in my hand, right? I'm putting in a simple thing. So it is given by something else. It's given by the culture, it is given by so many things, it's given by the condition where I am. So maybe if you can connect like this, that how ultimately, if you consider AI to be morally responsible and or if you don't consider it, then you also have to apply the same thing to other moral agents, right? Uh, you cannot have different law or punishment system for AIs and not AIs. So in that way, I think it becomes then a much more intense debate where you can add things. And then also I was thinking that you can also look at it from what punishment means philosophically. I mean, because if you have to punish someone, then that person should feel punished. So where are these elements which are there in AI? I mean, if you want to punish, then what is it? What punishment it is? Does it really mean a punishment for an AI? These aspects would take your debate. I'm just trying to, add certain things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Yeah, so about this punishment thing, that is, it makes sense because, like, if, like, what is the objective of punishment itself? Like, if we are punishing something to make sure that, this won't be repeated, then there are better chances of, like, sort of rectifying an AI machine than a human being, probably, like, sending a human being to jail and, like, hoping that this person will change. But you can just reprogram an AI and make sure that that mistake won't be, repeated. It's more of a foolproof plan with an AI. So it's more like punishment, like, why are we punishing? Like, what is the whole point of punishment? Is it retributive? So that's what, again, I think it'll go to a whole different discussion of like kinds of punishments and what are.
Yeah, but then I think it directly gives you kind of, isn't it, that it is directly connected with considering someone as agent. Because if the punishment, then why there are like lifelong imprisonments? It's not, punishment is all the time not about correcting someone.
Yeah, it's also sometimes about, like, making sure that there is a balance, like, you
Yes, and also
hurt
there
me,
is
you get
like,
hurt.
yes. So this is directly connected with, how a human being is different from AI with feelings.
Right.
So maybe I'm just saying that you can add these things so that it becomes, the thesis becomes much more
Yeah.
regular to,
There's also this problem of, like, AI can be, probably you can argue and, like, roundabout ways of saying it's an agent, but you cannot, it is never a patient, right? It is, the AI can never be a moral patient. So punishment is sort of, cannot mean the same thing for a machine and a
this
human being.
directly tells you that then considering some AI as a moral agent, then what does it mean? You just consider them and leave it. I mean,
I think
That's what.
we are digressing too much. We can take up the series
sure.
of and probably later as a tangent. Omkar has a comment. Omkar, do you want to raise it? Omkar, are you still there?
Hey, hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
No.
Hi. Really great lecture. And so my name is Omkar. I'm also working in the field of trust in AI. And one of the main problems that I have been facing with this topic is that unless there is a defined account of moral agency or ethical agency in these systems, there it is difficult to create an account of trust in these. And
Account of trust.
yeah,
Okay.
that um, who am I supposed to believe? Like an AI that has no agency, or the companies that are creating, developing the said agency? So the one of the main problems in ethics is that of justice, and nowadays justice is synonymous with accountability. So if we look at Floridi's argument, he argues for AI agency, but we see that there are no accountability structures that are present. And this undermines the larger model of justice or legal justice because that is the only option we have. So it undermines the larger model of legal justice. And also, Floridi's argument focuses on a certain type of AI that, okay, um, the AI agency and the way it is developed. So it always equates AI decisions to a little more sophisticated AI, which is said to be able to have a certain freedom while taking its decisions, whereas it does not take into account the large network of LLMs and other algorithms that functionally run the world. So the AI agency argument becomes a distraction from a much needed and urgent algorithmic accountability. That we are arguing about agency. Does it have agency? Does it not have agency? While ignoring the harm that they are already causing.
Yeah. So the I think I understand. So there are ways in which probably there is a direct there are immediate direct actions, and there are collateral actions, somehow how what news I see, like these information bubbles that are created, it's already happening, and then who are responsible for this. So that's what these responsibility, I mean, the talk of responsibility also include these things to an extent, because when we say that, the intentional, AI system is an agent not responsible, and then we are trying to focus that question at who should be responsible, who is responsible. And there are these theories of shared responsibilities that has to be, and in fact Floridi also talks about shared responsibility. Like there is this I think Cindy Friedman is the one who talks about a different kind of agency other than compound agency by Deborah Johnson, and I'm forgetting the name of it. Where she says the focus has to be in the human, not on this has to be, the discussion need not be from a human point of view or a information point of view. The interaction of human AI has to be paid more attention, and what happens there. And that has to be, in focus. I think these disciplines of STS also is there is this whole thing of, I'm forgetting everybody's name. This new kind of agency that they are proposing. Agency is, in our understanding, agency is something that why am I forgetting that name? What is it? Action network theory.
Actor network theory.
Actor network theory, yes. This whole actor network is this thing is more you presuppose agency to an action, and then actor network theory would say oh, there is no agency prior to the action. Agency is something that is evolved with the action. That seems to be more fitting for these issues, because things seems to be a little bit out of control. There is one program, there is this one function of a program or a AI system that create a lot of an effect that is that was not imagined, or that was not sort of conceived by the one who created the algorithm or the software itself. And then now there are agencies that are created as the action develops. So were you talking about, were you indicating something of that sort, how there are immediate effects, or like certain actions that are not recognized or talked about, and where the agent is not very clear, who or is it like sort of holding these agents accountable, like should we be thinking
The
more
first one.
about where to put the responsibility, or should we be sort of before prior to um, attributing responsibility, their understanding of the action itself has to be a little broader probably, uh,
Uh,
and
yeah, a little bit of both because uh, we see that let us say we can take example of misinformation
mm,
misinformation that is being heightened by multiple algorithms across several boards. And so there are
mm,
no accountability structures. Like we cannot go to anyone and say, hey, I do not want this to be happening to me. What can I do to stop this? There is no court
mm,
we can appeal. We cannot go to company because we do not have any power over these algorithms. So basically, an individual is subjected to the effects of these algorithms without
mm,
having any means to say no. That, okay, I do not want this. I do not want this to be a part of my life, or I do not
mm,
want this to be a part of my community. One is
mm,
subjected to algorithms without having any means of recourse.
mm.
So there is no, and there is not even any legal recourse because the nature of these technologies make them very, mm, it slips through the our current legal system.
Yeah.
So this arguments of, oh, like, does it have actual moral agency or does it not have actual moral agency, they also kind of feel like a little bit of shifting of focus from
Mm.
making an actual legislations and regulatory structures to control the negative impacts of these algorithms.
But don't you think like defining these terms, the agency or responsibility, or even understanding the moral interaction, you know, that's where we have to start if we are to build a system to address these issues. Like these terms have to be, sort of defined and understood. Isn't
Yeah,
it? I
yeah.
mean, I see this as like where we start. Yes, there is a legal applied side, a legal side to it, which I am not trained to understand so much, or but I
Yeah.
believe that these defining these terms, or like making sense of these interactions in different, like in different contexts, is probably a place where we can start these discussions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I completely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. It's just that with everything that is going on right now, and recently with the news of systems like lavender systems being put in place and different AI systems like being actively used in war zones and war crimes, like it's kind of difficult to argue. Oh, like does it? For me, it's like, is it okay?
Okay.
These systems are already used in killing people,
All right,
and yet
Onkar, I think we are repeating the same point.
yeah,
So we have 10 minutes left, so let me take another question. Srinish, you're still there.
Uh, hello. Gaya, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. So I just wanted to uh, push the idea of moral entity and moral agent. Okay,
Mm,
so
mm,
you seems to say that since uh, AI subjects lacks mindless. They are mindless subjects, and they lack intrinsic intentionality. We cannot conclude that they are moral agents. They are not responsible for their actions and all. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. So I just want to say that the punishment business and the responsibility business in with respect to AI subjects is quite irrelevant. Whereas whether they are moral entities, that what makes me quite worth considering whether they are moral entities. Like, let's say newborn children, they do not act the way adult people are, but still they are agents, at least to some extent, right? We do not they are not responsible for punishment and all these things, but still they are moral agents.
How are they moral agents? Like
At least they are moral
moral,
entities.
they are moral entities.
And
But
to some extent, they are moral agents in the sense that, let's say, a newborn baby is a owner of, a business, whatever a businessman's
that's the thing,
child.
right? Like newborn baby can be a potential owner, but it is not like that's what there is like the baby legal. So here it's a legal problem. The legal agency is only given once after the baby is like an adult. Like there are clearly like it the baby this being will only be a agent once after it satisfies so and so conditions, like it's to be a sane adult, free being, right? So a newborn, I think there is a little confusion between moral entity and moral agent, because moral entity can be an entity that is involved. So a moral patient is also a moral entity, right? In that sense, like a newborn baby is a moral patient, but not a moral agent. So there is the newborn baby can be a moral entity, but not probably a moral agent. Uh, because but there are like studies and like things that sort of compare the moral status of not newborn baby, probably like children who act. You do hold children accountable for their action. And this says, I'm again forgetting the person, the name of this person. So it goes like this. So now the child has some kind of a moral responsibility, but that responsibility is only towards the caregivers of the child. And this responsibility is of the nature that, or it's only for the use of getting the child accustomed to our moral or like our frameworks. Like it is as like a learning tool. It is so that the child can learn and be a part of this moral discourse. For only for that purpose, there is a limited responsibility that is put on the child, and this is being compared to a AI system that is learning, like the deep learning, self-learning AI system. So it's like while there is a learning curve for both, like that. So the responsibility that is put on these entities while they are on the learning curve is like it's a tool to sort of to hold them responsible in the future. So they are moral entities,
Sorry for
but I don't know how we can.
interrupting you. Hello. So
It's
my
okay.
question is simply like that.
Mm.
Since the responsibility and punishment business is irrelevant to the syntactic subjects, the AI subjects, because they are not having the first person perspective like the children's, right? So can we discuss more onto the can we frame them as a moral entities, like moral entities in the sense they subject to have some certain social positions, like the citizenship of that uh, a subject in UAE,
Sophia.
I think Saudi Arabia, so something like that. So what I want to say that whether AI subjects can be a moral entities in the strict sense. Yeah, that's all. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sreenish.
We will take
So,
one,
yeah.
we'll take one more question so that you can answer them together. So Varun, do you still have a question?
Yeah. If there is time, can I go ahead?
We have 5 more minutes left.
Yeah. Hey. Hi, Gaya, and hope you're not tired with all the discussion that is happening. So, yeah, the way I was thinking through it, I mean, like, see, I know the problems of the political problems of hanging on to Floridi's position and all of those things, given that he is now, yeah, hand in gloves with a lot of things. That is fine. But when we come to his argument, I was trying to think that, like, say, there is a bit of attraction there in the sense that, like, his argument has some mileage in the AI context, I think. Now, I mean, philosophical mileage. I'm not interested in the other kind of tractions it has. See, the problem here is that, and I'm glad you invoked actor network theory and all of those things. All of these people have been trying to point out that there can be moral implications when there are no even direct derived intentions or on the design part. Like say that is Deborah's argument, right? Like say what I can hold morally responsible is the designer and the designed intent into the artifact that is created, and now only through that I can have moral responsibility, giving going back to the person who designed it or the person who used it. These are the only two ways the moral responsibility agency can come according to the Deborah's framework. What a lot of important anthropologists of technology have tried to show, Bruno Latour and all of those things, is that like irrespective of what it was designed for, suddenly technological artifacts can have other moral implications that they are not designed for in the first place. And they give a lot of important this one examples. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with some of those things. We can take whatever it is. We don't even have to come to AI. Like say it can be as simple as a knife, a switch, or I mean, obvious point is a gun, which can have a lot of other things implications than what it is designed for. And like say cars, ceiling fans, various other things. We don't even have to come to AI to realize the point that, like say, the moral implications are much more than what the design has been done for. Intended design has been done for. Now it doesn't. So my initial response to Deborah would be that, like say, just holding moral responsibility and agency only to this designed, intended, pre-intended aspects goes out of hand, because I can have moral implications even though I don't have a moral design intended put it in the first place. I don't know what Deborah will respond to it. I'm just the initial formulation I have towards it. And this becomes more amplified in the context of AI. And this is where I would suggest is that, like, say, we have to move from this standard examples of self-driving cars and all of those things to the actual meat where is there. I mean, like, how do MLs work? And I would really suggest push you to just start doing how MLs function, what are the technological designs they do, because there the problem is that, like, say, the engineers would put the initial conditions and the data set, and the ML learns by itself and comes up with various weightages. And of course, as Jyoti was saying, the engineers will tweak the weightages for particular decision making and variables and all of those things. But it doesn't mean that whatever decision it will come through is only based on this weightages. It will learn and it will further improvise its decisions. And that leads to, even before coming to the moral aspects of AI, it leads to much more problematic aspects of AI, which is about, like, say, explainability, transparency, opacity of AI. Once I don't know how AI is coming to this particular decision, I may have set all the variables. I don't have a direct path from these variables to the decision it came to.
Right.
The decision it came through is opaque to us, epistemically opaque to us. Now, given in this scenario of epistemic opacity, how are we going to do ethics with it? Intention goes for a toss, design goes for a toss, nothing. We have now an agent whose decision is opaque to us, but it has implications. And that is where the actual traction of, I think, Floridi's point comes, that it is not that it is intelligence. It's thinking that, no, I should think like this. It is not deciding like that. It is just, it's on a freewheelie turning, going on things and doing things. And once it decides like this, now I have to hold this AI as responsible and have to do something with it, not legal responsibility, but something else. That is where I think.
Yeah, this whole problem of black box, do you think, is it making AI more familiar, similar to a human agent than ever before, like this?
No, I think human agents, even in the context of human agents, if you see legally, I have to confess to the crime that I make. Unless I give confession, I can't be held responsible for what I have done.
Exactly.
So
that's what I'm asking. So this problem of the other man, like I do not know the reason explanation.
I think it's I mean, if you read epistemic opacity in the context of philosophy of mind, it's very different. But epistemic opacity in the context of technology, it's very different. So there are a lot of ways they have distinguished this. So I would say there is already ready-made, like say, accessible materials on that. I would just read that, how they differentiate all of those things. How AI and ML is epistemically opaque compared to humans being opaque. I mean, I withholding my intentions from you is not it being opaque. You can force the answer out of me. But opacity is not that I can force the answer out of AI or ML, because it itself doesn't know how it arrived at that. It is that kind of opacity. Okay. So, and I would suggest that, let's say, yeah, then I think holding on to the distinction of what Floridi is making becomes more important. Then, I mean, of course, if you want to further improvise it, critique it is another thing. I think Deborah's point is bit, I haven't read her, of course, and this is the initial response. I'm not yet convinced by this. So, yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to point. Yeah, please.
I think Deborah Johnson was just responding to the problem of, ascribing agency only in that context that she is talking about responsibility, because for her, the responsibility and agency are not separable like that. But Floridi here, like, is separating responsibility from the concept of agency. And so, like, I think she's just responding to that act of separating responsibility from agency and saying that really does not make sense. So it, like, why are we, holding somebody, why are we, identifying something as an agent if it cannot be held responsible? If I am, so in these problems of black box where, I'm just thinking out loud here. There is a problem of explainability there, that you cannot, like, there is no explanation can be given. The reason, what can we do by holding these, like, if we are, so that's where I was like, what is the whole point of, identifying them as agents, if we don't know, there is no reason explanation that can anyway be given of.
No, holding them agents will at least give you the point that it is just the ML's designing, the way it functions, that churned out this decision,
but something
and
of
not
the
necessarily
ML,
the designer.
right? Yeah, but it cannot be of, see, there was this case of, I think in Chicago, most of these things happen in Chicago, where they sort of try to apply this AI assist tool to help the government. And then they came up with this, they needed to sort out, make a list of people who needed, it's a child who needed to be taken up by the system as the state's what. And so now the error was like around 75%, some error happened. And now they were like, so what is this? Why is it not getting it right at all? And then they looked at it and they're like, eventually they found out what the problem was, that the machine actually misinterpreted poor parents and poorly parented. So the parents were like poor. If they had taken the state's help at some point, financial help, then at somewhere they were categorized as poor. And now that was misinterpreted by the machine as poorly parenting. So now, is this the machine's problem, or is this the problem? And at some like an Indian actually designed this, like they wrote the program also. So now this was supposed to be taken care by the one who designed it. That difference of poor parent who's poor and poorly parenting, it is not. I don't know if we can hold the machine. It is the mistake is of a human being here also. Like there is no mistake of the machine, right? You can always trace it back to like doing something or not doing something of the creator
True.
of the.
I mean, this kind of example is very similar to what Jyoti was also trying to point out about, like, say, the using it in the medical context. I mean, of course, these are the clear-cut examples where the design has to be done in a much more thorough fashion. The data has to be non-biased, thorough, very fine-grained, and all of those things. That is fine. But apart from all of this, there is also the aspect of that, irrespective of the data being correct and the algorithm being fair and all of those things, there are also problems of we not having clarity on how we decided. The ML decided this. So these are all the, of course, the important stages, but I'm saying that the opacity also creates some ethical problems. So yeah.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, probably check Paul Humphreys, who's the one who started that epistemic opacity in a way. And he has also developed an epistemic framework to account for the AI decision making. He said it is reliability account. Maybe 4 or 5 years back. So that may be helpful, because Varun's comment now translates your AI problem into an epistemic issue, basically.
Which is where I started, if you know the remembers.
So, okay, so we had a good, wonderful discussion so far, and we have exhausted our time. So before we leave, Gaya, Jyoti has requested your email, so we can share it with her.
I am in the group. Like I can just leave my mail ID here.
Yeah.
I will give my institutional ID. The other is not working.
Okay. So so we had a wonderful session. So thanks everyone. Thank you, Gaya, for a quite interesting talk, and everybody else for quite an engaging session. With that,
thank you so much. This will really be helpful for me. I was really hoping to get some direction, and I think I have a few possible tangents to which I can take this further. Thank you so much for your feedbacks and questions and comments. It was very helpful.